Tonight, the trade war is expanding and the clock is ticking.
Donald Trump says Canada could face 50% tariffs in just weeks. The premiers are scrambling to show unity while businesses wonder whether to freeze investment before the next trade deadline arrives.
Is this hard bargaining or the beginning of Canada's biggest economic test in years? From Montreal, episode 93 of Night Talk Canada begins now. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And as usual, just on the street, I'm Eddie Tekalik. We'd love to hear from you tonight. Why not share your thoughts on this latest threat in the comments? Now, Gary, let's dive in.
Dive in we will, Eddie. Dive in we will. Monday, the conversation around the trade war changed. Did it ever? Donald Trump didn't float another trial balloon. He attached a deadline.
Last night, the Canada tariffs. One, are those a response to the wildfires in
No. That's separate. We're looking at that separately.
And what is there anything Canada
It's only
can do?
response to the way they've treated our farmers and our people. Yeah. Canada's been very, very tough on us over the years, for many years, and no other president's done anything about it. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. Many friends that live in Canada, but their leadership, from Trudeau to the current leadership, I mean, in all fairness to them, they need us to survive. Without us, there's no way they can survive. So, but they've been very, very tough over a period of the last 50 years, actually.
Now, if these tariffs take effect on August 19th, every government, every exporter, and every investor will have decisions to make long before the first tariff is collected. And, Eddie, here we go.
In April of 2025, as you know, the president embarked on a new trade policy really designed at reshoring manufacturing production to the United States and getting the trade deficit down after exploding for decades. Of all the countries, and we imposed tariffs on all the world at varying levels, of all the countries who retaliated against the United States, one was the People's Republic of China and the other was Canada. Some of the things they did is they banned the sale of U.S. liquor and other booze on Canadian shelves. They capped and limited the amount of autos that could be shipped to the United States from companies who were reshoring to the U.S. And they also continued to maintain limited space for market access for U.S. dairy. But importantly, they give other countries better deals on each of these three issues. And so it was a natural consequence after a year of these measures being in place, and longer in the case of dairy, for the president to take action. These are responses to this retaliation. We've been asking for a year for the Canadians to remove these, to modify them, to adjust them. They haven't done that. And so we have a tailored action that covers a subset of Canadian goods. We aren't banning the goods like the Canadians have banned American alcohol. We're not putting a cap on them or limiting them like they've done to cars and dairy. But we have a tariff, which is, again, is a natural consequence of the Canadian retaliation, which has endured for a long time. Well, the Canadians have always been willing to engage, if engagement means talking and meeting. We've done that. I've done that. I have a good relationship with my counterparts there. When he talks about these proposals, I won't go into detail because I want to respect the confidentiality, but what I will say is the proposals are generally for promises to discuss these issues, which we're already doing, not to actually change these things. They talk about collaboration on energy. We've never had tariffs on Canadian energy. We've always been open to that and that kind of exploration. So the types of things that have been in these proposals have always been, let's talk, let's keep trading in energy, things we already do, things that do not fundamentally commit to resolve these issues, maybe just talk about them some more. And for us, we want them fixed.
Prime Minister Carney's response was measured in tone.
Yesterday, the United States announced the intention in 30 days to launch the latest, what is a series of trade actions against Canada in violation of our agreement, CUSMA, with the United States and Mexico. And I want to put this in a bit of perspective, then answer a couple questions. The first is that in response to these actions, this began over 18 months ago. Canadians from coast to coast to coast have stood together. The federal government, provincial government, labor, business, Canadians themselves, uniting, focusing on what we can control, building strength here at home, supporting each other, buying Canadian, and diversifying partnerships abroad. We've signed more than 20 economic and security partnerships internationally. Throughout this time, we have made a series of comprehensive and detailed proposals about how to modernize CUSMA, recognizing the transition that the U.S. is underway in the international and all its trading relationships, including with Canada and Mexico. I spoke with President Trump earlier this morning. We agreed to intensify negotiations in the coming weeks, and the team and myself look forward to doing that. As always, Canadians, governments, business, labor will stand together to build Canada strong and to have a trading relationship with our North American partners that benefits everyone.
Now, this all happened as the premiers were gathering in Charlottetown for their annual meeting.
We can't keep rolling over for President Trump. We can't back down. We need a full Team Canada approach. Everything is on the table, but Ontario can't do it alone. We need the support. We need a plan from the Prime Minister to come in, and if these talks fail in 29 days, we need to hit them back as hard as we can. I'm tired of the bully trying to take our lunch money all the time. We always seem to be on our back heels. We need to be on the offense.
These tariffs do nothing for making for a more competitive North American economy, and it speaks to the importance of us as subnational governments to support our federal government in being very ambitious at the negotiating table and reviewing the CUSMA deal that we have, the CUSMA deal that I would say North Americans and Canadians value and would like to see renewed sooner rather than later to provide that certainty in our respective economies.
We will take the time to review the different measures that have been put forward by the Trump administration. As you know, I will defend and protect Quebec's economy, Quebec's workers, Quebec businesses until the end, and the supply management is something that is non-negotiable.
Now, to recap, Eddie, Trump has dramatically escalated trade pressure with proposed 50% tariffs on a range of Canadian goods unless a new trade agreement is reached. Ottawa is projecting confidence, though, while the negotiations continue, but provinces and industries are already calculating the potential damage. The real question now isn't whether this is political theater, it's whether business can believe the threat. And let's have a quick look here at what some of that threat is overall. Okay, so these are the most exposed Canadian industries under this 50% tariff threat that we are facing. Chemicals, plastics, and synthetics. Why? Well, this sector makes up the single largest share of the targeted goods in the $28 billion package. Exposure? Well, the Canadian petrochemical and polymer plants rely heavily on integrated North American supply chains. A 50% duty instantly destroys profit margins for chemical intermediates and finished plastics exported across the border. Okay, then we have the forestry and wood products. Again, they've been taking it over the years to a degree. They're battered by the ongoing softwood lumber disputes and anti-dumping quotas, or duties, I should say. Canadian lumber, paper, and timber producers are explicitly swept into this round. The exposure? Well, many Canadian mills operate on thin margins, and they export almost exclusively to the U.S. residential construction market. Adding a 50% levy risks shutting down operations across British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec, and even into New Brunswick. Then we look at the industrial equipment and machinery. Capital goods, electronics, and specialized industrial manufacturing machinery were directly included in the White House target lists. The exposure, well, Canadian manufacturers supplying machinery, tools, and industrial components to U.S. factories will face near immediate displacement as U.S. buyers look for domestic or alternative international suppliers. Building materials like cement. Why cement and basic construction materials are specifically itemized in the tariff proclamations. The exposure, heavy construction supplies are regional export plays, cross-border supply into the U.S. Midwest and Northeast. High freight costs combined with a 50% tariff make cross-border shipments uncompetitive overnight. And then we have the alcohol, food, and consumer goods. Why? Well, the White House cited alleged discrimination by Canadian provincial liquor boards against American alcohol as a primary driver for the Section 338 action. The exposure, Canadian distillers, wineries, and specialty food processors and niche consumer manufacturers ranging from processed foods down to sports equipment like hockey sticks face punitive retaliatory rates intended to hit consumer-facing sectors. The list is about 18 pages long. I'm sure it reads much like the list that included the island of nothing but penguins last year.
Correct.
When he announced his tariffs. The only things that weren't touched, crude oil and energy. Gee, I wonder why. Well, essential to,
I wonder why.
essential to U.S. refinery operations and domestic energy prices. But Trump says they don't need anything from Canada. Potash and critical minerals exempt. Vital inputs for U.S. agriculture and tech supply chains with limited substitutes. And core steel and aluminum excluded from 50%. They're already covered under existing Section 232 sectoral tariffs, and they're not stacked.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Hockey sticks, skates. There's one in there. It was grapefruit essential oil. Who knew we even manufactured grapefruit essential oils? It's just unbelievable, number of ways. So things are heating up. 30 days.
Yeah.
This is another one of his Nibs deadlines. Will he go taco? We're not sure.
Gary, yeah, you know what, Gary? I mean, I looked at the extensive list that got put out in terms of what's going to be tariffed, and most of these are actually under the CUSMA agreement as is, Gary. So,
yes,
from what I gathered, about 80% to 90% of what was on that list is actually part of CUSMA. The United States administration in Trump 1.0 actually put his stamp of approval on this deal, and I think he actually, quote unquote, called it a fantastic and great deal for everybody involved. So what? This documentation all of a sudden is not worth the paper that it's written on. We kind of suspected that happening right at the beginning of Trump 2.0, and now we're actually seeing it in color, in live action. Literally, just tear up the damn thing and throw it away. That's exactly what I'm seeing here. Is absolutely zero regards for good, honest business negotiation and adherence to contracts. So if this is not a business agreement between three countries, Gary, what is it? I mentioned Al Capone earlier today in the conversation with you. This is something that you would see out of out of one of those historical black and white footages that you see before a movie screening about what's going on in the United States, the world at war, and what's going on with John Dillinger and Al Capone. I mean, this is absolutely incredulous that an administration, any administration in the world, would so abhorrently just toss away agreements that were signed in very good faith, with avenues to renegotiate elements that may or may not have been, T's crossed and I's dotted to deal with it. But no, we have the administration in the United States just temper tantruming tariffs. As you mentioned, he tariffed an island full of penguins. I wonder if they actually disagreed with him or not, or were compliant. We heard Greer earlier on, mentioning that only Canada and China were the only ones that have been retaliating. Well, that's not entirely true, because the European Union and the countries within and other countries have actually renegotiated and pushed back on some of the tariffs with their own. So it wasn't just, they keeled over. No, they did not. Herein is the problem, Gary. The United States of America, and Trump and his clique there said that we don't need anything from Canada, and Canada cannot survive without the United States. Gary, the biggest trading partner on the planet is north of the United States, and it's called Canada. Okay, so when we push back, right, we're pushing back on a lot bigger trade elements than all the countries combined elsewhere, in terms of what they're allowing imported to their countries from the United States. So if we do something, of course it's going to have a much bigger clout on the United States. And I think what everybody just continues to fail to mention, whether it's the Trump administration, his underlings, his cult leaders, whoever you want to put into the picture here, even the media, even the media to a large extent, the big ones, the NBCs, the ABCs, and CBSs, they continuously forget and neglect to mention that at the end of the day, it is the American company, it is the American consumer that ends up paying for these tariffs one way or the other. And we've actually seen quite a few clips, Gary, from companies in the United States that are basically jacking up their prices to consumers because of the fact they can no longer borne the added costs of doing business by having to pay tariffs into the coffers of the U.S. administration. So who the hell wins in this? Not the guy that's going into the grocery store or the hardware store or whatnot to purchase whatever they need to do for their own personal needs or for their own business needs. It's just hurting everybody across the board. And that's what frustrates me. Every time I turn on social media, or I do a little bit of research in terms of what the public in the United States are saying, and they're all saying, we're getting killed with these increased costs. And then the next question comes, well, who's paying for the tariffs? That ignorantly and uninformed, they say, well, the other countries are paying for the tariffs. No, they don't. The other countries do not pay the tariffs. It's just making it difficult for the American businessmen and the American companies to go elsewhere for their supplies and their services and whatnot, as opposed to insourcing. And China is the other one. Of course, the United States is going to be very careful what they do and say with China. And it's not just from an agricultural perspective. 30 years ago, this whole thing about offshoring, Gary, which country in the world were the lead and champions in promoting offshoring, where millions of jobs were lost in the United States? The United States of America. They offshored manufacturing to China. They offshored manufacturing and technology to Taiwan. They also offshored to India, to Bangladesh, and all these places. And hardworking people in the States, they lost their jobs. So they want to cut their cake, eat their cake, and just take the whole cake by themselves, and then whine and bitch about it. I just don't get how they continue to try to act like they're functioning as a a business, getting that big deal for the American public. And it's just not happening. And they're frustrated. The administration needs a huge feather in their cap. And they want nothing more than to say, hey, we got Canada cornered and we got exactly what we wanted, because that would be a big win for them, especially with all these elections coming up, especially that he can't close off that war in the Middle East. All of these things are just slowly coming to bear in on him. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a tantrum, and I think he's just lashing out after the fact that he said in July he's not going to be renegotiating or renewing the CUSMA agreement. Yet it's still high up on his radar. So I think he's just personally trying to deflect more than anything else right now.
Well, again, Eddie, as I've said in the past, as far as this whole situation is concerned, as you mentioned in your comments, the fact that it includes goods that were previously exempted under the CUSMA agreement. So he has, in fact, just totally ignored that agreement and imposed these tariffs on goods that would normally be exempt. So again, I say, why are we wasting a lot of time and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, concern, getting ourselves worked up over it, when you know, in fact, even if you do bend over and give him whatever the deal is that he wants at the time, that's only good for the amount of time that he signs it. It takes him to sign the actual paperwork, because after that happens, the second he puts the pen down or midway through the signature, he could just go right off in the other direction again and say the deal's off. He can't be trusted. He will not honor contracts. They mean nothing to him whatsoever. So why are we wasting so much time and energy? We need to continue, and maybe in addition to Carney, get more of the top cabinet ministers out and banging on doors around the world to start spreading out more. We're going to have to live with what we've got, the hand we've been dealt, and find ways around it. So far, yes, there's been pain across the country, no question, especially in Ontario, where it is really the seat of manufacturing in the country. There has been pain, and there will continue to be pain right across the line. There's nothing at this stage other than hoping governments can help to prop us up a bit, or prop up these people who are being directly impacted and help them through until we get our economy recharged and our supply chains pointed in different directions rather than all pointing south. Because you can no longer depend on it. And I'm telling you right now, again, I've said this before, but don't look for, be holding on and clutching your heart, waiting until not only the midterms, but the 900 and some odd days remaining in Trump's term. You don't know what you're going to get on the other end. And I'll tell you something else, like the Democrats, I don't think they're really any better. I really don't. Depending on who, emerges as their chosen candidates. I don't think, though, that they're any better. There have been a couple of times now that different things I've picked up on, and other people have picked up on it and pointed it out as well, where the Democrats basically are in those states, they want our money. That's what they're concerned about.
Yeah.
We miss you. We want your money. Yeah, you miss our dollar. Yes, there are some good people in the U.S., but here's the thing, Eddie. Why are so many people sitting back and not saying a word? Why are they so quiet? Remember the 60s? in the protests against the Vietnam War and the protests against segregation and everything. And then into the 70s. In the 80s, there were always people in the streets letting their government know that they weren't happy with whatever it was. You hear nothing now. Has our society, and I would venture to say the same thing would happen here in Canada to a large degree. We've become so complacent. Or maybe just our logic and our brains are so overwhelmed with AI and social media and what have you that we just can't think anymore and think on our feet. Is that what it is? Or we've just resigned ourselves to just going along like sheep. Just point us in the direction, away we go.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is, some people are suggesting it could be campaign politics on his part. I don't think so. I think he sees Canada as either a wounded prey, or at least a very weak prey, or weak and wounded. And he feels
and that's the,
Go ahead.
And I think that's going to be his mistake. I agree what you're saying. He sees us as weak. Okay. And typically, if you look at the bully mentality, is when the bully underestimates his prey, if you want to call it, his target, and the target punches back, the bully will whine and cry. Well, the supposed weakling punched back on a few occasions. And what does the bully do? The bully whines. The bully has other issues that he's got to contend with. The bully has a bowel movement, has to do something, and goes out there and cranks out these tariffs. I mean, you know what, Gary? I mean, in the last 3 weeks, it's been nonstop. We've got the Ambassador Bridge fiasco. We got the wildfire fiasco. We had his stupidity in the World Cup. We had his stupidity that he's pissed that his picture got removed in the official pictures of the champion Spain in the World Cup. He's pissed off at that. He's not happy with Canada bowing down, and he's getting pressure from the distillers in the United States about how much money they're losing because Canadians are no longer consuming their bourbon and their booze. He's gotta act out. He's gotta scream out, and that's what he just did, Gary. Yes, this CUSMA and this tariff thing has been ongoing for more than a year now, and he'll raise it from time to time, especially when he needs to deflect away from something or try to give himself some leverage credibility. And that's what I really think this is happening right now, Gary. This latest outrageous burst of increasing tariffs and basically throwing the CUSMA agreement in the garbage, I think this is just part of a tantrum. And you know what? Listening to Doug Ford and what Prime Minister Carney had to say, they're acknowledging the fact that the United States can't be trusted. And maybe, yes, Gary, you know what? One day the Democrats may or may not take over sooner rather than later. We may continue getting the same old, but maybe sung to a different tune, right? So I think we as Canada have to prepare for that eventuality. Trump might not be there. He's going to have somebody else sitting in there that's just as psychotic. Or the Democrats at some point are going to win back the entire country. And just continue on the coattails of whatever President Trump has been doing. We don't know. So Carney and Ford are absolutely right. We have to find some ways of continuously diversifying ourselves to other markets above and beyond the United States. No one said ever we're going to get rid of the United States and stop doing business with them. That'd be suicide for us. That would be suicide for the United States. And I would not be surprised. Like, I mean, we've heard Premier Ford say we're going to turn off the taps and cut off the power feeds. Boy, you want to see a military fly over our borders in quake time? Just try that. Okay. And of course, energy was not part of the equation in this latest tariff fiasco. They're high, extremely high consumers of energy, and will never risk that. So, yeah, the timing of this maybe couldn't be any better, Gary. I mean, we've got the premiers and the prime minister sitting in Charlotte, in PEI Charlottetown, discussing what can we do as a country above and beyond us looking after our own provincial well-being. What can we do as a country, Team Canada, to continuously evolve our economic capability as an economic powerhouse? And I think that was pretty much a good chunk of the agenda. And how do we deal with the inconsistency of the American administration? And I've got faith in my vote that Carney and the premiers are going to continue pushing this Team Canada approach. And you know what? Listening to the media reports and the sound bites on the microphones and in front of cameras, I say they're pretty much arm in arm and hand in hand in terms of moving our country forward with all the provinces. Yeah, you and I talked about knocking down provincial trade barriers, and one of the biggest ones and the easiest ones to get rid of is alcohol. 9 out of the 10 provinces basically signed on board right now, and typically Quebec didn't say no, but they'll say later on they'll jump on the bandwagon. But I think this is a significant accomplishment if they can actually get rid of not the tariffs, but the restrictions on alcohol moving between provinces. This will open up all kinds of marketplaces for every province in our country. And at the same time, it will contribute to consumers like you and I in further being able to indulge on some of the spirits that this great country of ours and our wine producer and spirit producers can actually come up with. We don't have to depend on the United States. So if they want to tariff companies in America and the United States to discourage them from buying our booze that comes across the border, no problem. We'll just not buy any of it anyway, and just continue investing in our own spirits producers and wine producers in Canada. So it's good to see that they're together at the right time, discussing this very issue of what we're going to do with the tariffs and how we're going to further diversify. Not going to go through the entire list, Gary, because the last couple of weeks we've seen quite a few moves by Canada in terms of further strengthening our sovereignty and our economic progress. We talked about the submarines. We talked about over horizon technology from Australia. We know that the Canadian government is getting directly involved with military planning and the strategies as it relates to Europe. We're diversifying, Gary, and you know what? I don't think the United States of America, the administration, likes it very much. Well, I said last week, boo freaking who. You started the fight, and you know what? We're punching back, and sorry if you don't like it.
So let me ask you this, and for people watching right now as well. Mm-hmm. Do we retaliate? Do we impose reciprocal tariffs as well? Do you think that the Prime Minister still has negotiating room?
I think there have been reciprocal tariffs put on the United States, especially when they were speaking about tariffs on our copper, on our aluminum, and so on and so forth. That there were some reciprocal tariffs put into place. Nothing to the degree that the Americans or the United States put on Canada. Nothing to that degree. So should we put more on there? I would tend to think not, because at the end of the day, the tariffs end up being paid by Canadians, by Canadian companies at the end of the day, right? Why not take our energy, and why not take our focus? Why not take our planning? Why not take our strategies and continue strengthening our resolve by not having to do business with the United States of America? Find other avenues for our companies to use in terms of getting their necessary technologies, supplies, and their intellectual properties, their staff and whatnot. We can find markets elsewhere in the world. The world's a very big place, and other countries would be more than happy to get around the table with Canada and discuss how we can actually make our country better and how we can make their country better by doing business with us. So, you know what, Gary? Right now I'd have to respond to you with a flat no. I don't think we should further tariff the United States. I think we can do things without having to tariff them, just by encouraging Canadians not to buy American. What else can I say? I think you and I have made personal decisions of boycotting U.S. products. The last time I checked, that Facebook page that I was on, they're getting about 1.8 million followers in terms of boycotting American product. I've been pretty successful at it, and it's not that difficult anymore, and I don't feel bad about it. Am I paying a little more in some cases? You know what? Yes. Not exorbitant amounts, but yes. But I know that my hard-earned dollar will go back into our economy by helping the local merchant or helping the Canadian-owned company. So no, I don't think tariffs would be the way to go. I think what we need to do is not go out and hurt the United States on purpose. What we're doing here is diversifying our capability and weaning ourselves from total outright dependency of the United States. So my answer is no. Well, what do you think?
Well, I'm kind of leaning in a different direction, Eddie, on this one, because we have given up on more than one occasion over the last 18 months. And frankly, I'm tired of giving in. And I think there comes a point in time where you have to draw a line in the sand. The damage is already being inflicted upon us. So if we do slap some retaliatory tariffs on some items, or up the amount of tariffs on some items, yes, it's going to hurt because we are going to pay more on our end. But somewhere along the way, you have to take a stand. And if we just roll over and take it calmly and continue doing, as you suggested, diversifying, and we have to do that anyway. Either way, even if tomorrow all of the tariffs came off, we still have to pursue diversification and take all of our eggs, or most of our eggs, out of that one basket. But I think now, Trump is like a shark coming upon a wounded fish or a human in the water that's been wounded, smells the blood, tastes the blood, and goes in for the kill. And that's exactly how he's operating at the moment. So if that's the game we're in, we can't keep taking a whack on the side of the melon every time he gets up in the morning and he's pissed off because, like at the FIFA Cup last week, some of the athletes refused to shake his hand, but they shook Carney's hand and embraced Carney as he looked on, as Trump looked on in A, amazement, and B, just like really not happy about it. And I watched a husband and wife team, Canadians, the other day. Their YouTube bit was, put it all together. Trump was shunned by players on both teams in the FIFA final on the weekend, and yet they all seem to go after Carney. And then the next day we get 50% tariff threats. Sometimes they're probably not so far off the mark with this bird. That's how juvenile he can be. However, we need to start standing up. He's just going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And either we're just going to roll over and play dead and surrender, or all of a sudden he's going to say, oh, damn, these guys are up for a fight.
Well,
And
Gary, you know what?
we start hating them where it hurts.
Well, here's an example. Okay, great. They're getting oil from us at dirt cheap rates.
And
Well,
they
you know
haven't
what?
touched that.
Throw the freaking contract in the garbage. We're charging you 30% more as of the 20th of August. That's it.
Yep.
Exactly. That's how I think we should play. Play just as dirty, play just as tough, without even mentioning the word tariff. Just
Yep. Markets.
charge.
It's the markets.
Put a surcharge in there. I think Ford was actually threatening the governors in Minnesota, in Michigan, and I forget what third state that he was going to double the price of the hydropower that he's sending over to the United States, and that raised the whole brouhaha. I think if you want to, in my opinion, you want to punch them in the nose, but they can wipe it and help themselves. Raise the price of energy. Let me tell you how quickly there's going to be some discussion. So you just made me think, Gary. Do we have any leverage?
We do.
Yeah, we have leverage. We have big
Damn
leverage.
right we do.
You mentioned potash. They can't get potash out of the Middle East because of the fiasco out there, right?
Exactly.
A lot of potash comes through there. Where else are they going to get it from? From Canada? Wonderful. You know what? Let's take the American approach and price gouge.
Well, the other side of the potash issue is too that the Chinese are buying more of our potash now. So some of what was available for the U.S. market in the past is no longer available. And the same thing is slowly happening with the oil. So, we do have those capabilities. And what have they got to fall back on? And what argument do they have against it?
Mm-hmm.
Zero. It's our commodity. We set the price. And if you're the customer and you don't like the price and you don't want to pay it, then that's fine. We just turn off the tap and you go find it elsewhere. So we've got the oil, we have the potash, we have electricity from Ontario, and we also have electricity from Quebec going south. We all get together, and that's a fair chunk of the country between Alberta, Saskatchewan, into Ontario, and Quebec, with those items fully covered. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's leverage. That's leverage on our side.
Yep, I've had it way over. And
well, Gary, if they get those pipelines finished out of Alberta, the way they're moving at lightning speed right now in terms of getting pen to paper and getting the projects rolled out, it provides Alberta with an alternative to the United States in terms of the Asian market. The possibility of extending LNG out east, out through New Brunswick and out to Europe. It just completely provides our provinces with an alternate market they can go to and set the price as opposed to continue selling it for dirt cheap to the United States. That's where our leverage is. That's where I think our leverage is, Gary. It's not the tariffs. It's going to be hardcore business decisions in negotiation with what we have and knowing what they want. And like you said, we set the price, right? So I don't know, Gary. It's tariffs. I think I'm sticking to my opinion. Tariffs are just going to hurt our people. I think we should go more. I think it's time to go. Hell with going for the jugular. Right now, let's punch him in the throat first and see how hard it takes him to regain their breath. And we're not doing it because somebody had a bowel movement. We're actually doing this strategically and knowingly in terms of what we're trying to accomplish as a country. And that, again, Gary, right to the beginning of our conversation this evening, is diversify and wean ourselves off of the American dependency that Mr. Trump so proudly boasted about from the Oval Office. So we got to get away from that.
Right, and I'm just going to go back through and put up these comments because they didn't seem to stay up for very long. So let's start with the beginning. From Deborah, who said, if our government was weak and doing a horrible job, that is, licking the orange one's boots, he'd love us. This just makes me want to double down on my personal boycott of everything U.S. And then Monel came in with, it's them flooding the zone. The Americans just keep flooding the zone so we don't know what's up, what's down, what's news today, and what's not. And then Greg comes in with, gotta love your shirt. Okay. And yes, where are we here? I think rather than try and determine what is right, wrong, it is simple, really, in that Trump has, as it is his starting point, is we do not need Canada. Canada needs us to sell their products. Thus, oh, that came off again. Thus, we can put tariffs on, but we will never buy into tariff for tariff until we have truly have alternate places to diversify. Diversification takes time, so the immediate answer is try and get the best deal, as we have no negotiating room, and we certainly have no diversification in place, so we lose. And then he added with, gentlemen, we have no leverage. We cannot raise these prices with oil, energy, etc. If we don't sell it to the USA, what do we do with the extra resources that we need to sell? Aren't going to happen to fight tariff with tariff. Ain't going to happen to fight tariff with tariff. He does not care. Okay. Any thoughts, Eddie? Going forward from that?
Yeah. I mean, Greg is making sense, and Deborah and Manel are all correct. And Gary, this is what we're swimming in. Not just every week, every day and every hour, something changes in the narrative where it's almost impossible to get any sort of mindful strategy around what your next step is going to be tomorrow. So. The more and more time goes by, Gary, the more and more you just have to ignore and forget about what's being said down south and just do what we need to do. Because, as you mentioned, you can't trust the United States as a partner. You can't trust the United States as a business entity for obvious reasons. So. We've got to find something else, and as Greg mentioned, it's going to take some time, but we got to start somewhere and start punching back. And I think we have started to punch back, not as hard, I think, as you and I would like to see it, but we got to start somewhere. And I think we have started somewhere. And who knows, Gary? I'm extremely hopeful that as a result of the meeting in PEI. That everyone is on the same page, that they need to continuously find ways to punch back as provinces, because our provinces have a pretty big say in what happens in this country, and so it should be that way. But by the same token, working hand in hand with Prime Minister Carney in getting those alliances and business elements in place. Like you said. Put your ministers on the plane, damn be what Mr. Poilievre has to say about spending money. Get your people on the plane and get that damn business pipeline open to wherever you're sending them. I think not too long ago there was a whole entourage that went out to Japan with handfuls of MOUs, which is great to see. And we've got to continue doing that and allowing and opening up those chains of business for our business leaders in our country. And we have good, solid, reputable businesses that will go after that. Just gotta get that pipeline going. I'm getting tired of being sucker punched, Gary, to tell you the truth, just like you are. Enough is enough already.
Going back, though, to what Greg was saying, as far as like for oil, for example, let's not forget that the refineries in Texas need our oil and they're getting it below market value and have been. They're all set up, and it would cost millions to retool them to take and process, to be able to process lighter crude oil.
Right.
And get some heavy oil from Venezuela, but I don't think they're pushing out yet what would be needed to offset what they're getting from Canada. So again, you know what? Market prices, you guys, you've got the Strait of Hormuz shut down. So, sorry, it's supply and demand. We have the supply, you have the demand, and here is the cost. The days of the cheap oil going to Texas refineries is over.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about removing all tariffs, then we can sit down and maybe work out a deal. The art of the deal. Now, here's the other thing too. Well, before we wind up this segment, leave one last thought. Markets dislike uncertainty even more than bad news. And remember, investment decisions often change weeks before any government policy does. So our takeaway from this discussion is, if Trump follows through, August 19th could look very different for Canadian business. Up next,
I found this on the web. For takeaway from this discussion is if Trump falls through August 19th.
Okay, Siri, enough.
Canadian business.
God, I hope that's fixed in iOS 27. So, up next, can Canada present one front? Well, we'll find out in a few minutes.
What used to take a full crew and $1 million studio now fits right on your Mac. For years, professional video meant complicated setups, endless editing, and tools that never quite work together. Meet Ecamm. Ecamm is a complete broadcast studio built for Mac. Record, stream, and present all from one place. And with dual mode, you can stream in wide and vertical at the same time, so your content's ready for every platform. From live shows to podcasts, virtual events to video courses, training sessions, even Zoom meetings, webinars, and presentations. Ecamm gives you control and a studio that just works the way you do. Built exclusively for Mac, so it's simple, elegant, and insanely capable. Ecamm, your broadcast studio.
Trade negotiations don't happen in isolation. While Ottawa negotiates with Washington, Canada's premiers are trying to negotiate with each other. The question is whether they can finally align around a national economic strategy. The premiers are gathered in Charlottetown, facing pressure to demonstrate unity on trade, infrastructure, and economic resilience. Regional priorities remain sharply different, raising doubts about whether Canada can present a coherent front during high-stake negotiations.
Well, it's amazing, Eddie, that this meeting happened this week, and just as they were gathering in Charlottetown for the meeting, that the U.S. president dumps the 50% tariff threat on the table, which very quickly changed the whole tone of that meeting. Now, coming out of it today, they did talk about healthcare funding and looking for more money from Ottawa for healthcare funding. That was one of the big ones that they discussed. But also top of mind was the impact of the 50% tariff threats that Trump has hurled at Canada. One other thing, too, is 9 of the provinces and territories combined signed a letter this week which brings down the interprovincial trade barriers related to ordering alcohol from different jurisdictions across the country. That's now gone. It took almost a full year from the time they've removed some of the other interprovincial trade barriers last year to get this deal in place. Only Quebec didn't sign it,
Right.
which I find interesting. And I'm going to be looking. I haven't had a chance to look and find out as to why
Look,
Quebec did
I
not
think
sign
Frechette
it.
and Frechette of Quebec and Yukon said yes, but at a later time or something to that effect.
Oh, that's what it was. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I recall. But why they said at a later time, I'm not sure. To me, as a matter of fact, if you look online, a lot of distillers in Western Canada have been advertising and saying that they're shipping east for a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
So if it comes in an unmarked box and you don't have to declare anything, I guess, what's to stop you from doing it? But anyway, it's now going to be legal because technically, when it was set up before, it was illegal to bring like even a 2.4 of beer from one province to another in the trunk of your car. Anyhow, we're slowly moving into the 21st century in areas like that, but there are so many other things still that need to come down to bolster our economy as one Canadian economy. So that's that part of it. The other part, labor mobility. That has been a stumbling block, especially between Quebec and other provinces in particular. Why not get, I don't understand why it has taken so long to start getting your act together to have a standardized level of qualifications for each trade across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Or
While
one
both
country.
While both provinces, I mean, let's just talk about Quebec and Ontario right now, they're both dying for journeymen. They're both dying for tradespeople. Hundreds and thousands of positions open for hiring. Yet, we will restrict people from going across the borders to be able to take on contracts in areas that need to be taken care of. I just don't get it. What the resistance is this, Gary? Is it the unions that are getting in the way here? I really don't know. I just don't get it.
I think more than anything, I don't think so much it's the unions, maybe to a degree. More than anything else, it's just government bureaucracy.
Wow.
Wasn't there one last year that came up for discussion about if you're running a truck through Ontario, the size of the tire, the maximum size or the minimum size of the tire or whatever, was different than what it was in other provinces? How does that make any sense?
It's a tire. It rolls.
Yeah.
Right.
So, there are different things like that. And I know in New Brunswick a number of years ago, there was quite a row between Quebec and New Brunswick because we had a number of Quebec tradespeople coming into New Brunswick for some of the bigger projects at the time. But yet some tradespeople from New Brunswick that had at least a line on jobs here in Quebec couldn't come in.
Yeah, that rings a bell, actually.
Yeah, couldn't come in and work here. So those sorts of things, and that's the kind of thing too, Eddie, that just kind of eats away at a country, and you start getting ill feelings against one province or one group of people versus the others in the country, kind of thing. That doesn't promote unity by any stretch of the imagination. Not at all. So to be moving in that direction, they've covered a fair amount of ground in the last 18 months, but we could move faster, Really, we could
We
move
got to move
faster.
faster. They have to, with a sense of urgency, Gary. This is not time for pitter patter. Let's get in the damn room and bring the people that need to be involved in the decision. Let's get the damn thing done. Whether it's trade of goods or trade of labor, free trade of labor. We're Canada, for crying out loud. Why do we make it so damn difficult?
And
I
we've
don't
got
get
all
it.
sorts of things to deal with: pipelines, energy corridors, electricity,
Mm-hmm.
our ports, manufacturing. Can our economic security finally override regional politics? And when you're talking regional politics, you get into the regional priorities. And I apologize for my throat; it's going on me again tonight, but we'll get through this. Atlantic Canada, exports, fisheries, smaller economies. In Ontario, auto manufacturing, supply
It's a
chains.
big one.
Alberta, energy access, pipelines. Here in Quebec, aerospace, aluminum,
Yeah.
provincial autonomy. It all adds up. So can the premiers finally agree on something? That is the question. Or will Ottawa be negotiating while the provinces argue among themselves? Well, that's been the case far too often over the last 10 years or so. As a matter of fact, if you recall, the former prime minister very rarely called the premiers together, even during tougher times. Or if the premiers were having their Council of First Ministers annual meeting, like in Charlottetown or this week, Trudeau wouldn't attend.
No. And you mentioned 10 years, and Trudeau Jr. came right to mind. Gary, that's very clearly leadership 101, which is on opposite ends of the scale between today's Liberal Party 2.0 under Carney versus Liberals 1.0 under a flailing Trudeau. Complete opposite ends of the spectrum, and you're absolutely right. The frequency or any level of intensity to promote interprovincial discussions to really discuss critical issues and get them resolved on behalf of the country, were pretty much next to none. Besides the conference calls that maybe Trudeau had regarding COVID and how to deal with it, anything more than that was very far and few between. So you're right on that point.
And then here's Carney. Yesterday, he had a virtual call with the premiers, and I think Dominique LeBlanc and a couple of the others, to update them on his conversation with Trump by phone. And then today, he, as planned, he met with them in Charlottetown.
Mm-hmm.
And he was there last year, and he's brought them together a couple of times in the last 18 months. It's something you really never saw with Trudeau. Anyhow, trade strength abroad really starts with economic cooperation at home. Really, that's why it all matters. So, full marks to the premiers. They seem to be on board. They're speaking with a united voice. It's going to be interesting to see as the summer goes on, in the separatist movement in Alberta is out banging on doors and promoting its message. And here in Quebec, of course, we're gearing up for a provincial election in early October. And if the party that still has the lead in the polls wins, is talking about a referendum in its first term, at some time in its 4-year term.
Yeah.
But beyond that, and I have to say, the clip we had of Frechette this evening, and a couple of other clips I saw of her over the last few days, I've been impressed with her stance.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very straightforward, businesslike, not backing away from it. Here it is, and then away she goes. So, Eddie, what's our takeaway?
Well, Gary, our takeaway is very simple. Canada cannot negotiate as 13 different economies. Simple as that.
Right. And under normal circumstances, that was going to wrap up this evening's show. However, we had the bridge. This is a zoo in here tonight. We had the bridge fiasco, and that's what it turned into. It was a fiasco with the Gordie Howe Bridge. Just when we thought everything was under control, and you'll have to pardon Rocky. He seems to have taken a sudden liking to a piece of metal here. I may have to leave, Eddie. You may have to get you to take over for a minute while I chew. Anyway, the Gordie Howe Bridge will open on July 27th.
Mm-hmm.
There were questions, and we thought we had the answers to the questions as to the financing and the special deal that you-know-who in the Oval Office became involved in the bridge and started demanding concessions.
Right.
And guess what? He did get concessions from Canada.
More than you and I thought. More than you and I thought last week.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the messaging from the Prime Minister was mixed. As a matter of fact, the government did a piss-poor job of getting the communication out as to what had taken place. So it kind of came out already they had lost control of the message when they finally put something out.
Mm-hmm.
And there are still questions that are unanswered because Prime Minister Carney, on a couple of different occasions, was not clear. It did not come across. He may have thought it was coming across in his own mind, but when you look back on it, there were different things being said. Or it would appear, at least they could be interpreted different ways. So let's try this.
Is the Canadian debt repayment on the bridge included as expenses before profits are split with the U.S.?
Well, let me say, first of all, that we're very pleased that the prospect of the bridge reopening later this month, or opening later this month. This is good for Canada, good for the United States, both in the short term and the long term. What we have with the agreement with the U.S. Is as follows. And let me start with what it is. It's not splitting the tolls of the bridge. It is an agreement for 15 years to split net revenues. Splitting of tolls, any sharing of the toll revenue won't happen until all of the debt is repaid. We will split net revenues over the course of the first 15 years, and those net revenues are after operational costs. So it's manning the toll booths, it's maintenance, it's snow removal, a series of other operational costs. We expect that after those costs, for the first few years, net revenues will be modest. In fact, we expect them to be negative, as traffic ramps up. So negative to modest in the first few years. And what's been designed is an alignment of incentives so that when the splitting begins, all of the portions that go to the U.S. government will be reinvested in economic development, regional economic development in the area, the U.S. side of the area, obviously, which is pro-cyclical. It reinforces, more traffic, higher revenues, more investment, and that's the way it moves forward. The underlying agreement that we have with Michigan remains the same. And so no sharing of tolls until all the debt is repaid. So it's a good deal for both sides. It gets things moving, and that's in the spirit of today's announcement, which is to get things moving.
Are you able to provide more information about the deal? Some sources to us and to Bloomberg and Reuters are saying it's a 50% split, I guess, once the sharing starts happening. And if this is a Canadian project, why did you have to start giving? Why did you decide to start giving some of the revenue away?
The first thing is you quoted the overall amount of the capital investment of the project, around $6.5 billion. What we're talking about is very modest relative to the size of that. Okay, that's the first thing, just to give a sense. The second is that, as I'm going to repeat myself, but I think it's an important point, that it's aligned, the incentives are aligned here, because the reinvestment in regional economic development on the Michigan side, mainly the Michigan side, that's obviously good for Michigan, but it's also good for Canada because it's going to reinforce the traffic. So we see the incentive alignment as a reasonable discussion. It's a good deal for Canada, good for the U.S., and it's great for both countries to have this bridge open, and we're looking forward to,
Is it 50%?
Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, he still didn't. It wasn't really black and white yet. You know what? You mentioned you said something about Carney being unsure in his answers. I think the opposite. He's very sure of his answers. He's just being very elusive in coming out with what actually happened. Yeah, it's one of the few times that Mr. Carney, Prime Minister Carney, has pissed me off and kind of stained my faith in him to a certain degree, if you want to call it. At the bottom here, you say elbows up or down, you judge. This is definitely an elbows down situation, Gary. I really hate to say it. Mr. Poilievre, you get the information you need to get that clarity from our Prime Minister in terms of what exactly this deal was and what is it exactly that we did concede. From what I'm getting from this, we weren't supposed to be splitting any of the tolls, and it was estimated it would take about 50 years for us to pay down the bridge. Now, for the first 15 years, we're going to be splitting the tolls and not putting any money necessarily towards paying down the expenses that went into building this bridge. Yeah, Gary, I am not happy with that. You paid for this bridge, Gary. I paid for it along with another 41 million Canadians. Bless the children, of course, that are not working, but you get the message. We Canadians paid for that bridge. We used American labor. We also used American product jointly with Canadian resource product and workforce, and we built a fantastic bridge. And we are going to be giving the Trumpster money. I am not happy with that. I don't care who was in charge, Biden, Obama, I don't give a crap. This should not have happened. The agreement should have been just like Kuzma. This agreement we put into place in 2012, I think it was, Gary. This is exactly the way it should have moved forward without any issues. There would have been fantastic ceremony inaugurating this bridge, and now we have nothing, and Canadians got screwed. We screwed the pooch on this one. Mr. Carney, you screwed the pooch on this one. This is coming from me. I'm really unhappy with what you did here. Really unhappy.
Well, that response, or those two responses to that reporter's questions, and he tried to get the third one in to get the clarification, and the communications person, you get two questions, that's it, move on. Anyway, that is one of the most classic cases of a word salad, or to put it bluntly, verbal diarrhea that I've witnessed in quite some time. Mm-hmm. Where that was something like 2 minutes and some odd seconds of my life I'll never get back. And I'm no wiser as to what took place. So let's have a look here. This was posted on the bridge website, the Gordie Howe International Bridge website, late Tuesday night. And if you read it, Canada and the United States have reached agreement in principle on the following. Number one, economic participation. Canada will provide annual economic participation payments outside the 2012 Canada-Michigan crossing agreement equal to 50% of net bridge and crossing-related revenues for the first 15 fiscal years of bridge operations. Now, before we get into that a little more, I just want to point out that the original agreement that was made was between Canada and Michigan. The federal government of the United States had nothing to do with this. Nothing.
I forgot about that.
And Canada paid for the buildings for the U.S. border inspection people. Okay, so net bridge and crossing related revenues is all revenues collected with respect to the bridge less all incurred operating costs of the bridge. And again, here, there is no definition of incurred operating costs. Is it, as Carney said in his response, maintenance, snow removal, things like that, where the different things that you expect for the day-to-day operation of a bridge. He did not mention about that including debt servicing, paying down the debt. Here, it does not mention anything about debt servicing. And you can bet your bottom dollar that if that had been part of the deal, that it would have been in the words here, included in the words here, because the U.S. would have insisted on that. So, net bridge and crossing related revenues is all revenues collected with respect to the bridge less all incurred operating costs of the bridge. And normally when you talk operating costs, you may have debt servicing to throw in on top of your expenses, but it is broken out separately from the operating costs. Such payments shall be made to a United States-Canada Economic Development Fund. I don't know why we're involved, because it's going to be established and solely controlled by the government of the United States. Number two, eligible fund commitments. Canada and the United States will reasonably agree on the objects of the United States-Canada Economic Development Fund, which will be for the benefit of the United States and trade between Canada and the United States.
And why would we trust statement 2?
Exactly.
Literally, why would we trust statement 2?
I rest my case, Your Honor.
Has been thrown in the garbage. Yeah. Taking into consideration everything else that's been thrown in the garbage in terms of the paper not being worth worth the signature that it got written on. Like, why would you trust point 2? I wouldn't. I mean, that money is gone. We're not going to see that money, period.
And has the Trump supporter family who owns the Ambassador Bridge, the old, outdated, slightly crumbling Ambassador Bridge, what did they contribute to some kind of regional economic fund? They didn't have one to contribute to. Oh, wait, I get it. They provided a few jobs on the American side.
Mm-hmm.
For plowing and things like that. And probably at the minimum wage of $6 or $7, $8 an hour. Meanwhile, they've made huge amounts of money, a fortune, from the bridge and the tolls. And if you read down through, there's something else. Anything outside of a 10% increase in tolls that we decide upon must be approved by the US government. Why? Well, because, or even a reduction, because don't want to interfere. What Bozo doesn't realize, apparently, is that over the last couple of years, a lot of trucking firms have been avoiding the Ambassador Bridge. They've been driving a long way around, and I can't remember where the bridge is in between Ontario and, it just escapes me. Anyway, but they've been driving around because it was fast. They could get across the bridge and cleared through customs on both sides faster than what they could the Ambassador Bridge, which empties into downtown streets in Windsor on the Canadian side and Detroit on the US side. The new bridge hooks up with the 401 on the Canadian side and an interstate on the US side. No more wheeling big 18-wheelers through hordes of traffic in downtown streets. And no more having to drive the long way around, because they were still saving money, some money, because they got across, cleared customs on both sides faster at this other bridge. So they're going to be, the trucking companies are going to be really happy with the Gordie Howe Bridge. But this whole thing, just come out and never mind the verbal diarrhea. Prime Minister Carney, just say, yes, this is what I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is.
Speculate why? Fine, or tell us why. I'm always hoping that there is a logic, because he's been logical about everything. That there is a logic behind making this kind of decision for the betterment of Canada in the medium to long term. We can't even guess that because we don't understand why he did this in the first place. At our loss, Sorry, Gary.
No, don't be sorry. We should be enraged by the way this has been handled. And Carney himself should be enraged by the way the communications aspect of it has been handled, unless that's the way he directed it. And if that's the way he directed it, shame on him.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something. I've been willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And you've heard me say a few times, I've given him the runway. And there have been a couple of other things along the way where I thought, okay, you've moved down that runway. Now you're starting to run out of room. And this one was a major push down. So what are we doing?
Not a good one.
We're not going to have really a major official opening on the 27th. That's been called off. We're going to have kind of a little Canadian celebration. But then you've got the U.S. ambassador, our one of our favorite people, Pete Hoekstra, saying that he's going to be there for the opening of the bridge, along with the Canadian ambassador to the U.S., and there's somebody else. I forget who it is now.
I think the mayor of Windsor, I believe, is supposed to be there as well.
Yeah, because the Canadians are going to have their own little thing, but they felt that to have a big celebration was not appropriate given what happened on Tuesday with Trump and the tariffs. Well, if you feel that way, why in the hell are we not fighting back? Whoopee-dee, we call off a celebration, which we didn't need anyhow. It was just a photo op. And I'm so sick of photo ops, and I'm sure most other people are too. the photo ops, and you've got various plants and everything, the hordes of people standing behind them. Anyway, sorry, Mark. Major faux pas from my perspective, and I still don't know. Yeah, you're right. A big thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Yeah, that's right.
And I still don't know. Why don't you, for God's sakes, just come out and put it on the table?
Yeah.
Does this include the debt servicing costs, or does it not? A simple yes or no. The damage is already done. You've got a chink in your political armor now. Welcome to the world of politics.
Own up to it. Simple as that. I mean,
Exactly.
how many times have we seen a politician not own up to it and we just lose faith and trust in them? Just own up to it. Don't even say you made a mistake, or say that you made a mistake, or this was a necessary evil, something. He should have owned up to it, owned the issue, and let's move on. But no, he's got to disappoint a lot of interested Canadians like you and I, voters of Carney, and perhaps potentially non-voters of Carney. You've really disappointed us on this one, Mr. Carney, sir. Just a horrible. The way it was handled was horrible, and just giving into that huge of a concession to our neighbors down south. That's definitely at the wrong time that we're trying to promote and build a Team Canada here. Just not a good situation all around.
Well, at the very least, for people who are taking media courses, this will be a prime example of how not to handle a messaging situation. Anyway, that's my opinion. And for that, and I don't know, what is it, $2.50, $5, whatever it is, you can grab a ride on the STM. And with that, Eddie, that will put a wrap on episode 93. Now, tonight wasn't simply about tariffs. It was about whether Canada can respond with urgency before uncertainty becomes economic reality. Deadlines come and go, but confidence, investment, and jobs can disappear much faster. Let me leave you with this question. If August 19th arrives without a deal, what should Canada's first move be? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're looking forward to reading them.
And remember to like, share, and subscribe or follow on your favorite platform. I'm Edith Kallick. Good night, everyone.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Night Talk Canada returns in 7 days. Good night.